Okay, so you know how in like every sport, you need a referee, right?
Yeah.
So I want to make sure everybody is playing by the rules and nobody is, getting away with anything.
Yeah, right.
So today we're diving into a situation in India that's kind of like if the referee suddenly decided they could start calling fouls on the coaches too,
Exactly.
and it has everybody talking.
Yeah,
Okay, so specifically, we're talking about the Lokpal,
right.
which for anybody who doesn't know is like India's top anti-corruption agency.
Yeah, think of them as like the ultimate watchdog.
Right. Like their job is to make sure that even the most powerful people in government are held accountable.
Exactly.
And recently, they made a really controversial decision. They said that they have the power to investigate judges in the high courts for corruption.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting because, the judiciary has always been pretty independent in India,
Right.
and they've traditionally handled complaints against judges internally.
So it's like two completely different systems are kind of clashing here.
Yeah, you could say that.
So could you break it down for us? Like, what's at the heart of this whole debate?
Sure. So basically, you've got the Indian Constitution, right, which is like the supreme law of the land.
Right.
Now, the Lokpal is powerful, but even they can't overrule the Constitution.
Got it.
And the Constitution specifically says that the Supreme Court is outside the Lokpal's reach
Okay.
because it was created by the Constitution itself.
Makes sense.
But the high courts are different. They were set up by state laws, not directly by the Constitution.
Ah, so that's the loophole.
Exactly. So the Lokpal is saying, hey, we can investigate high court judges because they're not explicitly protected by the Constitution.
So they're basically saying they can't go after the top boss,
Right.
but they can scrutinize the deputies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a pretty clever legal strategy.
Yeah, it is.
And it's raising a lot of questions about how judges are actually held accountable.
Right. So it's like this ruling is kind of shined a light on the whole system.
Definitely.
And I think a lot of people are wondering, well, how were judges held accountable before the Lokpal got involved?
Right. Well, for that, we got to go back to 1991. And there was this landmark case, K. Veeraswamy versus Union of India.
Okay, I vaguely remember hearing about that.
Yeah, so this case basically set up a system where any complaints against judges are dealt with internally within the judiciary.
Okay, so it's like judges policing themselves.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So let's say someone had an issue with the judge's conduct.
Right.
What would they do?
So they would first go to the chief justice of that particular high court.
Okay.
And if the complaint was serious enough, it could go all the way up to the Chief Justice of India and even the president.
Wow. So there's like a whole chain of command.
Exactly.
And what kinds of things could happen to a judge who is found guilty of misconduct? Like, what are the consequences?
Well, there are a few possibilities. They could be asked to resign. They might have their workload reduced, or they could even be transferred to a different court.
Oh, interesting. So it's not always like a public trial or anything like that?
No, it's usually handled much more discreetly.
And has that system ever actually been used? Like, are there examples of judges facing consequences for their actions?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There was this one case a few years back where a high court judge was accused of manipulating the court lists to favor certain lawyers.
No way, seriously.
Yeah, it was a pretty big scandal, and after a long inquiry, he ended up getting transferred to a different state.
So they basically just moved him around.
Yeah, pretty much.
It all sounds so kind of hush-hush.
Yeah, it definitely prioritizes discretion over transparency.
Right. It's like they just shuffle the cards around without telling you why.
Exactly, and that's why a lot of people are now questioning whether this system, with all its secrecy, is really enough to ensure real accountability.
Right. Like, is it actually working?
Yeah, I mean, there are strong arguments on both sides. Those who support a more transparent, independent system say it would boost public trust and make sure everything's fair.
Right. Because right now it feels very much like an insider's game.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that kind of system, like, really threaten judicial independence? Like, judges might be afraid to make tough decisions if they're constantly worried about being scrutinized.
That's a very valid point, and it really shows how tricky this issue is.
Right.
Because a system that's too intrusive could definitely have a chilling effect on the judiciary.
Because ultimately, we want judges to be able to make decisions based on the law,
Exactly, without fear or favor.
not on what's popular or what will keep them out of trouble.
Exactly.
So it really seems like the challenge is finding the right balance
Absolutely.
between ensuring accountability, but also protecting the judiciary's freedom to do its job.
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, for sure. So,
Right.
okay, let's recap what we've talked about. We've
Okay.
got the Lokpal making this super controversial ruling.
Right.
We've got this existing system for handling complaints against judges which is all about discretion.
Very much so.
And we've got this fundamental tension between accountability and independence.
It's like a classic dilemma.
Yeah. And it kind of makes you think,
About what?
well, you said earlier that even the Lokpal has to follow the Constitution.
Right.
But if nobody is above the law, then how do we hold accountable the people who are literally interpreting the law?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Like even superheroes need some kind of oversight, right?
Right.
So how do we design a system that makes sure we have a judiciary that's both powerful and accountable?
It's something we all need to think about.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely not an easy problem to solve.
Definitely not.
And there's no easy answers. But we encourage you to keep learning about this issue and form your own opinions.
Absolutely. Stay engaged.
Yeah.
Stay informed.
And who knows, maybe one of you listening will come up with the perfect solution.
You never